Welcome back. With us is Gus Wilson. We are talking about business entities. Gus, before the break, we were talking about S-corps, and before we had to break, we were talking about some of the inflexibility with the shareholders of S-corps.
That's right. You mentioned that there are certain owners who can't, or certain people who can't own S-corps, trusts, corporations, and others of that nature. And once again, very tricky. I would definitely recommend before you seek new owners for your S-corp or before you liquidate your S-corp, definitely talk to an attorney and a CPA as well. One other thing on S-corps before we move on is that I mentioned before that the partnership agreement for partnerships is very, very flexible in how it can be written. It controls most aspects of the day-to-day operations of the business, as well as the starting, winding up, and distribution of assets of the company. The S-corp is a little bit different in the partnership in that the S-corp agreement, essentially you're required, since you don't have partners, you have members or shareholders, you're required to treat them all equally. And so if you were looking to do some kind of fancy allocation of loss or gain or ownership, you probably would not be able to do that in an S-corp, and you'd need to think about a different entity, either partnership, sole proprietorship, something like that.
Okay. And now there's the big hybrid that's come out since, I guess, '97 is when we started seeing that up in Wyoming, Montana, somewhere like that, as a limited liability company or corporation, depending on which state you're in. So how, there are a lot of advisors you go to and they just slap you in an LLC because it's easy to form. And that may not be the most appropriate thing, but what are the advantages and disadvantages on risk and tax with an LLC?
Just in a nutshell, and I know this is probably oversimplifying it, but an LLC is the business risk of an S-corp with the taxation of a partnership, I guess is the easiest way to say it. As a matter of fact, you file on the same forms as a partnership, so it is a flow-through type entity, but you have all the rights and privileges of an S-corp. So it is the most popular entity currently. I think I read an article that said like 52% of all new entities formed are LLCs right now. It gives you the flexibility of that partnership agreement that we just talked about, as well as you can mitigate most of your risk of the business with the trappings of the LLC itself.
Okay, well, and then I think one thing that we haven't touched on are, the formation of these are through state documents. So it's through the Secretary of State in whatever state you're registering. Most times you can go online and I can find a form that I can create an S-corp, a C-corp, an LLC, or a partnership with. Why can't I just fill out that form and send it in?
You really are more than welcome to. The information is out there. I say the information is out there, but not the expertise. You have to be very, very careful. Make sure you know what you're filing. Otherwise, you're going to file for something and you might not do it correctly. A case in point, I had a client, he thought he was making an LLC, ended up with a C-corp, so we had to cancel his FIN number, go right back to the drawing board and start his entity. He wasn't able to get the date started that he wanted, and he had to, he had these weird year ends, and it was, it was just kind of blew up in his face. So once again, I mean, the IRS and the states do make that information available to you, but you need to be very, very careful in how you treat that information. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true, doesn't mean it's easy to do.
Right. And the other thing with that a lot of people don't realize is they may fill out that initial form correctly, but it's the annual reports each year that they've got to file. And then the other thing with most of these, if you don't have someone draft bylaws or have a partnership agreement or a articles of organization for an LLC, things like that, then you fall under the default rules at the state, which that's codified in state law, and you may not be aware of certain things that you've necessarily got to do. So to take the analogy that we use when we're meeting with clients further on this business road, if you choose to go on, on your own route without any advice, basically what you're doing is you've decided to drive your vehicle on an unpaved road filled with potholes and two huge ditches on either side, and inevitably you're going to break an axle or something, you're going to wind up in one of those ditches. You're going to have to come in and find a group of advisors to try and pull you out of that ditch and right the ship, as opposed to doing it right on the front end, which I think costs a lot less.
That's true, and I will say this, that any preparer worth their salt, when you bring a new entity to them, the first thing they're going to ask for is the entity type and the bylaws or the partnership agreement, because there is no way that you can have any sort of business advice or prepare any types of returns without understanding how that business operates and what's contained in that agreement. The agreement gives you so much stuff that's needed. You know, it would be folly to try and do a return without it. Also, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that a lot of the Secretary of State filings require that you have the bylaws when you file for an application to do business in that state.
Well, and that's sort of some of the interesting thing is sometimes it's just the articles of incorporation, and then you've got to file those with the Register of Deeds office in the county in which you're located. You know, and then some other states, they require on your articles of incorporation, you know, not only where your business is located, not only a registered agent, but also where your business files are kept. And there's a lot of nuances like that where I've seen some individuals that are very good advisors in one state try and form an entity in another state, and it becomes a huge debacle. You know, so the whole trick is you've got to get that group of trusted advisors to help you figure out what's appropriate. And it's not just sort of a one-stop thing of I'll talk to them initially and then I'm done. It's you got to keep them in the loop all the way along so you've got smooth sailing, because then you get into payroll taxes, sales tax, these type of trusts that you're holding for the state or the federal government that can get you in a whole lot of trouble if you're not watching those.
Like you said, we're talking about road crews and roads and cars, if you do it wrong instead of a road, you could hit a wall. You know, you could, in essence, your business could be stillborn before you even started the business if you set it up wrong. And like I said, I know I've said it about 10 times already, but see a lawyer, see an accountant, and see a CPA. There's really, you know, a little bit of money spent on the front end will save you lots of grief, lots of heartache on the back end, lots of long hours at the office doing tax forms and stuff that you really don't want to do. Is to focus on your core, which would be your business.
I couldn't have said it better. Our time is up for this edition of Legalese. I would like to thank our guest for taking time out of his busy schedule to be with us and for sharing his thoughts and insights. If you would like more information about Legalese or any other program on GHS TV, please refer to our website at www.ghstv.org. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to join us next time for more discussion on legal topics. Until then, I am Vince Perryman, and thank you for watching.